Cronus Titan King. Cronus, the Titan son of Gaia, Mother Earth, and Uranus, Father Heaven, lived deep in the earth, where his father had locked him and his brothers and sisters. While the others quaked in fear of their father and hid in the shadows of their mother, Cronus just watched and listened. Gaia suffered. The cruelty of this father toward his children was unbearable. She tore her hair, she gnashed her teeth, and in the end, she offered her children an adamantine sickle, lustrous and unbreakable, to confront their father with. Horrified, the children retreated. All but Cronus. Where his courage came from, he didn't know, but he never hesitated. He waited until nightfall, when his father was asleep. Then silently, stealthily, he struck. Wicked Uranus, his fear became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Cruelty is the snake that bites its own tail. The blow was powerful. Not lethal, no, the old man lived on. But withering, he became a shadow of himself, his strength a memory. An immortal god humiliated for all time. The blood of Uranus splattered across Gaia. Gaia spun and spun. Yes, she had wanted freedom for her children, yes and yes. But, oh, the cost was so dear. She could do nothing but spin through the whole year. And as she spun, the blood drop seeped deep within her. From them sprang 3 more groups of children. The furious Erinyes immediately took to the air and flew above Gaia, screaming for vengeance. They were their father's daughters. They wept blood as their serpent hair snapped at the winds. The giants lumbered forth heavily armed, with breastplates and spears at the ready. They looked around, dazed by their sudden existence, knowing nothing about who was at fault, mother or father, who could know. But one thing was for sure, they had to find a way to wage battle. The numerous nymphs didn't hesitate, they were their mother's daughters. They ran over the boundless earth, hiding in streams and woodland glades and cool grottos. They laughed and played, confident already that they would bring delight to a world that so clearly pined for them. Parts of Uranus splattered across the seas, as well, and thus sprang up the very last child that he would ever father, riding on the sea foam, Aphrodite, who even as a child caused those who viewed her to fall to their knees in wonderment at her beauty. Not every little thing was right with the universe, but all was far better than it had been for Cronus and his brothers and sisters. They were free. Cronus crowed at his victory. Both his mother and father looked at him with fear. Each parent, separate and hushed, prophesied to him that he would be stripped of his power by his own son. The prophecy ate at him, for no one knew better than Cronus the destruction that a child could wreak. He grew sleepless, wild-eyed. Cronus, who had felt no fear as a child, now felt nothing but fear. He distrusted at random, and for no reason at all locked his brothers, the Cyclopes and the 100-handed ones, in the deepest part of the underworld, dark Tartarus. He could tolerate the company only of his fellow Titans. Then his Titan sister Rhea caught his eye. She was too lovely to resist. So he took her as his wife. But each time she gave birth, producing glorious children, the daughters Hestia and Demeter and Hera, the sons Hades and Poseidon, he panicked and swallowed them. Cannibal? No. No, no. He told himself this was simply self-protection. Rhea, like Gaia before her, felt herself drowning in grief. And, like Gaia before her, she finally reached the dreadful conclusion, the only conclusion, she must stop the brutality. When she recognized the first stirrings of a new baby within her, she asked her parents, Gaia and Uranus, for help. They shepherded her off to the island of Crete, where she gave birth in secrecy to her son Zeus. Then she left her newborn son for her mother to raise, swaddled a stone, and hurried home to Cronus, who quickly seized the false baby and swallowed it. Wretched Cronus, completely duped, completely ignorant that his son Zeus led, completely doomed. Cronus' fear of his children transformed his body into their person swallow, 5 times. But the 6th, time he swallowed the swaddled stone and began his own demise. Zeus, king of the gods. Young Zeus clambered up the rocks behind a billy goat. He walked a mountain ridge and stopped on the highest peak of Crete to look out over the salt white sea that stretched to Africa. He turned and there was Gaia, his grandmother, who had raised him. "You're strong enough," she said. "It's your turn." Zeus' heartbeat raced. It filled his head. It filled his whole self. He needed no further information or encouragement. His father, Cronus, had swallowed his brothers and sisters at their births. Zeus had escaped only because his mother, Rhea, had fooled the fear-crazed man into swallowing a stone instead. The boy had grown strong, fearsome, clever. He now went quickly to meet his father for the first time. He was primed for this. Armed. This was the moment of defeat or victory, yet his nerves were steady. He felt strangely elated. While Zeus journeyed, Gaia reached out to Cronus and crooned in rocking tones that penetrated in that deep way only a mother's voice can. The suggestion was too powerful. Cronus doubled over. The stone and children within spewed forth from his mouth, landing at the feet of the newly arrived Zeus. The 5 older children of Cronus, Hestia, Poseidon, Hades, Demeter, and Hera, aligned themselves with Zeus against their father. What else could they do? Zeus meant freedom, a delicious new idea. But Cronus had brothers and sisters, too. He called the Titans to his side. War began. And continued, as wars will do. For 10 years the battle scorched the earth, smoked the skies, sullied the waters. Bitter as bile, it wore away at everyone's spirits. Until Gaia, the Earth Mother who had started all life, told Zeus he would win if he liberated her children, his misshapen uncles and his one-eyed uncles, that Cronus had cast into Tartarus, the underworld. Zeus never wasted a moment on second thoughts. He freed the 3 brothers with 50 heads and 100 hands each. He freed the 3 Cyclopes. In surprised gratitude, the Cyclopes gave Zeus the spitting lightning bolt and deafening thunder with which to split the skies and flame the earth. They gave his brothers gifts, too. On Poseidon they bestowed a sharp, gleaming trident with which to smite the seabeds and raise massive waves. To Hades they gave a helmet of invisibility with which to disappear. These 100-handed and one-eyed brothers fought beside their nieces and nephews, all against the Titans. And the nephews let loose with their newly gained ferocity. No longer was the battle simply hurling rocks and spears, and crushing the enemy with axes. Oh, no. Zeus hurled bolts, burned the forests, and left them smoldering. He cast flames so hot the seas boiled and parts of the earth melted. Poseidon shook the earth so rivers crashed through their side walls. Hades raced unseen among all, stabbing, smashing, maiming. As Zeus saw it, the war amounted to old against young, and the young gods won, as they had to. That is the nature of things. By the end of the war, both sets of gods fought from mountain tops, the Titans from Mount Athres, the young gods from Mount Olympus. So after the war the young gods were known as the Olympians. Zeus had the Titans sealed in Tartarus with the 100-handed ones as guards. Gaia was flummoxed. What was the point of locking away the Titans? Why did Zeus have to be as vengeful as his father? And so she gave birth to her last child, the monster Typhon. From his shoulders sprang 100 serpentine heads with flickering black tongues uttering every noise imaginable, human, bestial, thunderous. Typhon's eyes flashed fire. Everyone fell back in terror. Except Zeus. He had lightning, a force unsurpassed. He burned off Typhon's heads and banished him to become wild winds that cursed sailors on the high seas. Zeus was the undisputed king. The Olympian brothers divided up rulership of the universe. Poseidon took the seas, Hades, the underworld, Zeus, everything else. the division wasn't equal, and the Olympian sisters were left out entirely. But that was typical of Zeus. He was brought up to believe he was entitled. Nothing ever changed his mind. Hestia, goddess of the hearth. Hestia's first memory was of blackness and stifling heat. Then something tumbled in beside her, all wiggly, and another wiggly something, and two more, and, finally, a giant lump. She was crowded, poked and prodded, cramped, and so breathlessly, unrelentingly hot. She didn't know she was trapped in her father Cronus' belly. She didn't know the wiggly somethings around her were her sisters Demeter and then Hera, and her brothers Hades and then Poseidon. She didn't know the lump was a stone her father had been duped into swallowing in place of his sixth child. She knew only great discomfort and an undefined lack that gnawed at her spirit. Something was supposed to be happening. Someone was supposed to be there. Somehow everything was wrong, everything hurt. A vague fear lodged in her heart. Then came a constriction so tight and forceful, Hestia screamed, there in the place with no air. Silent and pained, she screamed and screamed until her throat was raw, and she was pushed up and out. She lay, disgorged on the ground, with brothers and sisters and that one stone, blinking at the rude light of day, shrinking from the edginess of the noises carried through the air, wet and shivering and shocked to be separate from the four other wiggly bodies in the lump of a stone. Her brother Zeus had freed them, strange thing that he was, all tanned and muscular and accustomed to everything Hestia found so foreign. He freed them, only to tell them they must fight at his side against their father Cronus and his sister and brother Titans. Rocks, spears, axes, shouts, cries, howls. Freed into a war? This was freedom? Was the world insane? Hestia cringed. She picked up rocks in both hands and feigned interest whenever others watched her, but, fortunately, they rarely did. She climbed trees and peeked through their thick foliage, hoping for a glimpse of her mother Rhea, of the arms that had never cradled her, the hands that had never caressed her. She built a mound of stones with a pit in the middle and sat there hidden, wondering when the sweat and blood and tears would ever stop, and, if they did, who she would then be. For up to this point, she had been no one, really. And then it ended. But not because the animosity had run its course. No. It ended because her brother Zeus got the help of strange men with 50 heads and 100 arms, and because other strange men with a single eye in the middle of their foreheads gave Zeus the lightning bolt, the great cheat. That's how the war ended, with one side getting a weapon the other had no equal of. Cheat, cheat, cheat. Hestia's brothers were impressed with Zeus' power. Poseidon was only too happy to rule the seas, Hades was only too happy to rule the underworld, and both were only too happy to leave the rest to Zeus. Hestia's sisters were impressed with Zeus' tanned skin and muscled legs and arms and chest and back. Each looked at him with flirty eyes. Only Hestia saw Zeus as a frightful maniac. She kept her distance from him and all other males, like a shy spider. She looked everywhere, and she saw the families that Titans had formed over the years, and she saw the families their children were forming and the families their grandchildren were forming, and she saw a kind of love that made her ache. They sat around the hearth eating and talking and teasing with one another. They hugged and laughed. That love, that was what Hestia wanted to foster in the world. And so Hestia became the goddess of hearth and home, and in her quiet, still way she finally banished the fear from her heart and found a gentle, soothing peace.